Welcome everyone. I thought we would knit some DK weight socks this Christmas. So if you want to pause this, go and grab the bits you see here. Some yarn, 8-ply DK weight yarn, some knitting needles and tape measure, stitch markers. You'll probably need 4 bulb pins or stitch markers, progress keeper, scissors and a darning needle. And then come back to this video. There's details in a link down below for the pattern that you can use for free from Ravelry, from another designer it's free. So I thought it matches the same pattern I use virtually for Wayne. I thought we would knit together. So you're going to need a tape measure, scissors, bulb pins or stitch markers, progress keeper, darning needle and some circular needles. I like fixed circulars and they need to be long enough to do the magic loop method. There's details of what size needles to use in the pattern. For my patterns, because this yarn is a bit plumper than normal DK, I'm actually using 3.5mm needles, but I think the pattern that's linked below says 3.25. But whatever's your preference. And then let's get ready to cast on for this project. So I'm just going to do the stretchy sort of cast on, which is the long tail cast on. So you just want to get a decent amount of yarn off the skein or cake. And then because if you don't have enough, you'll run out of yarn to do all the stitches and then you'll have to start again. So that's the only tricky part with this. So now I'm going to pick up the circular needles and get ready to cast on for this project. So I'm going to be casting on 52 stitches for the size I want to make. And if you are a tight knitter, you could go up a size in needles just to cast on to make it a bit looser if you're super tight. But otherwise, grab your knitting needles and we're going to do a simple long tail cast on. So you're going to grab your yarn and in your left hand, you're going to place the yarn over the needle with it draped, with the tail, the end being over your thumb and the yarn closest to the cake over your forefinger, your pointer finger. And then in your right hand, you're holding the needle. You're going to pop it underneath the yarn between your thumb and pointer finger, sorry. And I use my right hand pointer finger to just secure the yarn on the needle so it doesn't slip, and then I can maintain control. So you're going to go towards yourself, underneath the yarn around your thumb, over the yarn that's on your pointer finger, under and through the yarn on the thumb. And then you're going to let it go, and that's your first 2 stitches. We'll do that again. Under, over, and through. So we'll try that again. Under, over, through, under, over, through, under, over, through, under, over, through. So do that again slowly. Under the yarn on your thumb, over the yarn on your pointer finger, under the pointer finger and through. Under, over, through. Under, over, through. and then you're going to keep going until you've got the right amount of stitches on your needle. In this case for me it's 52 stitches, so I'll come back to you when I've done that. Okay, so I've cast on 52 stitches, which is what I require for the pattern size I'm doing. And I'm going to now just count, make sure you've got a little bit of length left over so that you can weave that in at the end. So what I'm going to do now is just count 26 stitches so that I can split. So I'm going to move this down onto the cable because that's the easiest bit to do. So we'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. So we're going to just bend the cable and slide those stitches down on either side. There we go. So now what we're going to do is turn this around and we're going to pop the stitches onto the metal part of the actual needle for both sides. Now we're going to line this up so that we make sure the bottoms of the stitch is not twisted, so it's facing inwards all the way around, see, like that, because we don't want this to get twisted, otherwise it won't turn out. Okay, I'm just going to take a bit of extra length off there. So we're going to slide this up. Now what I want to do is get the working yarn from this side over to there. So what we're going to do, and there's different ways to do this, but this is just how I do it. It's a little bit awkward, especially when you're not used to it. This is kind of, I would say, probably the hardest bit about the whole thing is getting started and just making sure those stitches aren't twisted till we get round the first round, and then just once you've done the first few rounds you'll be right. So what I'm going to do is just get this stitch from this side over with my finger. It's pretty forgiving, especially when it's DK, it's big enough, and just pop it on this needle. So that's why it's a bit awkward. And now we're going to pull this one with the working yarn, pull this one off, just making sure you're getting the correct bit of the stitch off and over onto this needle, and then you pull that yarn. Right, so now we're set. So with magic loop, so we've got the yarn, we need to get that working yarn, just pop that up the top here. So this, with magic loop, the top needle is the one we're going to be knitting, is our knitting needle, and this one is where we're knitting the stitches off on the bottom. And this is what we do every time we turn, is you take the needle from the top and pull it out like so till you've got the cable, and then we're going to hold these nice and firm and pop our needle in the bottom one, and we're going to pull this tight. So what you want is this cable to sit snugly up here, especially for the first 1 or 2 stitches, because then you won't get a ladder at the side. So now I'm just going to do my first stitch. So we're going to do knit 1, purl 1, or you can do knit 2, purl 2, it's whatever your preference is, but knit 1, purl 1, all the way around till we get back to this tail. Okay, so for now we know that the tail represents the beginning of round, so you don't have to worry about stitch markers at this stage. So we just did a knit stitch, and once you get going you'll start to be able to read your knitting and see the bumps for the purls. So this is a knit stitch, so we want to come back, I'm going to purl, and I'll come back to you when I've gone all the way around. So I'm just almost to the end of the first needle, and I thought I'd just show you. So we've just done a purl stitch, so I've got to bring this round, knit stitch, purl stitch. Now, depending on the size you're knitting, you might end on a knit stitch, which means that the first stitch on the next needle is a purl stitch. I find, especially if you're a beginner, purl stitches can be a bit loosey-goosey compared to the knitting stitches. It's just the way I find it works out. So I prefer to just do a knit stitch at the beginning of every needle. That way it's not noticeable on the cuff. You don't really notice it. And it just means that everything stays nice and snug and you haven't got a risk of a ladder, which is where the stitches are loose, which is not what you want. So now I'm just moving this needle that I was working with back down, because we're going to knit these stitches on the bottom, because we're always knitting the stitches on the bottom, and then the top needle I'm pulling out. Now I need to make sure this is nice and snug, otherwise it's going to be loosey-goosey and it won't be very comfortable or nice. So you're going to get your needle ready and you're going to bring your working yarn around. Oops, wait on. Just make sure, sometimes you need to just put your needle underneath. Oops, I've got a bit of thread. Okay, so I want my working yarn up here. Now see, it's here. I want to make sure, oops, that it's nice and snug as I go round, so that you can pull it really tight. Knit. And don't worry if it looks at first a little bit loose. It will tighten up, don't panic. And then you're just going to knit and purl all the way over to the other side. So don't panic too much about that now. I did do it snug and it will tighten up as I come round and you won't see it. Okay, I'll see you at the other end. Now I'm back at the tail end, so we're at the beginning of round. So I'm going to bring this needle back under so the working yarn's on top. And we're just going to keep going in the round until we reach 1.5 inches for the cuff, or whatever's your preference. I would suggest that you get yourself a little notebook and write down your recipe so that you can tweak it, and then eventually you'll have your sort of set recipe for each person that you're knitting socks for, whether that's yourself or a loved one or friend. So yeah, so just pulling that nice and tight at the start of the round. We're just knitting and purling, and you can pull that a little bit gently if you need to tighten that up. So knitting and purling, and I'll come back to you when I'm at 1.5 inches of cuff. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll show you how we work down towards the heel. Here's an example of socks I recently knit.